if something happens, before you even get exposed to other people's thoughts about it, before you get their opinions where you're thinking about it, you have to.
Is that something you've personally had to change your perspective on recently?
There's a lot to pick from. We live in a society where there's a lot of mob action. People want to, and it filters into how we think, how we behave. And so we see people. I think one of the dangers of the kind of society that we live in now is that. But now we are exposed to the thoughts of so many people.
Welcome to today's episode, and
thank you so much.
Thank you for joining this episode. Before I ask you to introduce yourself, because there are some people that you cannot introduce well enough, and it's just best to, allow you introduce yourself. I think what I can say here with me really is someone that has shifted perspectives constantly put forwards anyways, in so many ways. And I think I'm going to throw a jab now. Recently, I discovered that he has shifted a particular perspective. Maritally. And his perspectives, it would not longer be from a single man now or an unmarried man. From a married man's perspective. But yeah, I think so far, one thing I really admire so much is the fact, and I heard it from your friend that you were on that recording with, about just knowing a lot about a lot of things, which is something that I think is very, very, very admirable. And it's something that I just felt like it would be good to just have this discussion or conversation with you. I know you've shifted your perspectives from geology to although I was going to ask a question that recently, is it that you've rekindled your love for rocks and all those things? Because I saw your IG post or story the other day about rocks and computers, how rocks are created from.
Well, I think that it doesn't ever leave you completely. It's something I would have loved to do in a perfect environment. I intentionally decided to study geology. So it wasn't the way Nigerian universities are that they just give you a course. I intentionally decided I wanted to do geology. And so it's something that I was passionate about at some point. And then over time, that mindset shifted. And then considering the environment and all of that, I just decided to leave it. So it's not a life that I've completely left. There are still things I see. I'm like, oh, wow, this is nice. Should have been nice, maybe in another life. I don't know. Right? So I've not completely left that field entirely. If the opportunity still presents itself, probably a small part of me would want to maybe still explore that, but it's far behind me now, but not completely out of sight. Let me just put it that way.
Interesting, because it's funny that you say you chose it. That's something I probably did not even know there was a course like that when I was, picking courses and all those things. So it's really
It wasn't my
interesting.
first choice. It wasn't my first choice. Ideally, okay, I think we're moving away. We are talking about career now. I'll just talk about it briefly. Ideally, what I wanted to do, growing up was something related to space science. So either astrology, astrophysics, or anything like that. And then checking the brochure and trying to get admission to the university, I saw that there was no university in Nigeria that does any of those courses. It's not available. The closest thing you can get to that is geology. Right. So you can do geology as your first degree and then do second degree in astrophysics or any other thing in that line. But for your first degree, you most likely you can't. So, and that's why I just settled for geology. Even with that, it wasn't my first choice, but with JAM and everything. You know the story.
Well, anyway, I think you've already started the introduction. So please just quickly introduce yourself to the audience too.
All right, my name is Toby Samuel. I'm a graduate of Obafemi Awolowo University. I studied geology. But I currently don't do geology. I'm a content writer, a content marketing specialist, and I do a little bit of web design, just a little bit. What else? You've said the other things about me. I'm married, of course.
You can't even help yourself.
That's part of my introduction. That's part of my introduction now. Is in my CV. So yeah, I think that's all about me. I have a
Yeah,
lot of interests. I'm interested in a lot of things. I'm a
yeah,
talker. I enjoy talking, and I talk about different things. I
yeah.
want to know about different things. I'm like, I try to know to know about as many things as possible. I want to just be able to say maybe a little bit about, or in every conversation, just be able to say one thing or the other, and that's all. So I try to learn as
And
much as possible about everything. I think that captures my personality and
everything.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and a Twitter warrior too.
Uh, well, I'm more of a spectator on Twitter. I don't know why people think that I'm a Twitter player. I'm more of a spectator. Like I'm a very
Uh,
serious spectator. I only talk when it's pressing, and I just can't hold it anymore.
Interesting. I think yeah, one one thing about I think to just establish is that so the topic today is conformity, really. And conformity in the sense that the social norm, there's a trap, right? Social norm trap and why we conform. So talking about conformity, really, I think just to establish, we as humans, we are herd animals that we always love to fit in. I know it sounds weird to some to believe that, but in the real sense, I think we are all like that. We just try to fit in and bond with others as much as we can. And is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I don't know. I think this podcast is not necessarily to say this is good, this is bad, but rather just to kind of explore different perspectives to things and making the best out of it. If it's good, then how can we leverage that? If it's bad, or what exactly should we really be looking at? What is that perspective that most times people oftentimes ignore or are not aware of? I think that's just really it. And I think with something I've come to understand is that so many things are not black and white
Mhm.
as I
Yeah.
used to think. There are different shades of gray between white and black. And I think exploring those different shades has been, I think if I was to name this podcast another name, I think it would be 50 Shades. Sorry. It would be, uh-uh. It would be different shades, of gray
Mhm.
that exist between white and black. You are laughing. It seems like you like this
It's an
title.
interesting
Or
title,
similar
Sha.
title.
It's an interesting title, really. It would be.
But yeah, so what is conformity? Where exactly is conformity? Like, when we say conformity, like, what exactly is it, and how does it really relate to us as human beings? Like, are we naturally wired that way, or is it nature or nurture, like people say?
Mhm. Well, I think you've started you've given a general summary to the idea of conformity, because that really explains what you said about the fact that as human beings we want to be part of something. Every human being wants to belong to a tribe, right? And it is, and that's basically what conformity is about: the need
Yeah.
to be part of something, the need to not be different from others. We are primarily, the natural instinct of a human being is to be part of a herd. For those that believe in, and it's not even, I'm not talking about evolution in the evolution sense of the scientific evolution, the evolution of society, the way society evolved, and all of that. There was a time that we didn't always live in big cities, right?
Hmm.
There was a time that it was just a family unit, just one or two people related to each other that would live together.
Hmm.
And then you have tribes, and that's that's where the concept of tribes, kinsmen, and all of that came to
Yeah.
be. Everyone lived in a family, and what would separate you from other families is that you have to look like them. You have to look like the members of your family. You have to act like the members of your family. You have to,
Hmm.
if you stand out too much, you would that's the idea. You have to be part of a tribe. So because of that, if you look at the animal kingdom, for instance, now, if a lion wants to attack a herd of, let's say, bulls or zebras, right? It will look
Yeah.
out for the one that is different among them,
Hmm.
the one that is weak,
Hmm.
the one that is not going as fast, the one that is slower than the others. And so that means everybody will try to be like everybody else. You try to keep up with everybody else. If you get left
Yeah.
behind, you are going to fall prey. So I think that natural instinct to be part of a herd, to be part of a group, it's
Yeah.
wired into us. It's natural. It's a
Right.
natural instinct, right? And of course, nurture as well plays a huge role in that. As you grow, as you mature, as you learn that you would perform better, you would benefit more if you fit in than if you stand out. I think that
But
is
is that always the case?
definitely not always the case. There are things that would be an advantage for you if you stand out,
Right.
right?
Right.
But there are times that conformity makes sense. There are actually
Hmm.
times that conformity makes sense. I think that one of the things that we need to understand about this whole thing is that um, the things that we do as a society or that people do are time tested. They are strategies that
Hmm.
people have done in the past and have
Yeah.
worked. So if they say this is how it is being done, it is not
Hmm.
because they are just saying it like that. It's because some people have done it like that before and it worked, right? So
Right.
if you're coming in this generation, it makes sense to consult what has been done before. It makes sense
Hmm.
to fall in line and say, okay, this is how it is being done and just follow along that path. But so in that sense, it would make sense to just go with that instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. For instance, now,
Hmm.
with education, for instance, if they say go to school, right? It makes sense that you go to school. It,
But I could homeschool my child.
yeah, but that is
Some people have been homeschooling recently.
that is still education. Whether you're homeschooling, you're still giving that chance. So the fact that you cannot say that I want to be different, I don't want to conform, I don't want to be part of that, I don't want that head mentality, so I won't go to school.
Yeah.
Right? So it
Yeah.
means, and the reason why it's like that is because the way society has been structured gives you an edge if you are educated, right? So
True.
in that sense, it makes sense that you conform on that level. So
Right.
in some aspects, in some areas, conformity just makes sense. Conformity helps you better. Conformity gives you
Mhm.
an advantage, right? But
Yeah.
in the midst of that, there's also a need to decide on things that you need to stand out on, right? You don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to follow the
Not to
herd.
conform.
There are times that conforming just gives you an edge. Just makes sense that you conform.
Right. But can you think of any time, like personally now, that you've conformed just to fit in?
Okay. Okay. I think the most obvious example would be
Don't say school.
full of us. That's the most obvious example, you know. The reason why
But could you not be better without going to school, though? Could you not be better off without going to school? Is there a
well,
possibility that you could be
I
better off
think that
without going to
in
school?
the way, and it really depends on your society, really. The way our society is structured,
Yeah.
it just makes sense that you go to school and you go all the way, right? At least as at a few years ago. Presently, that dynamics is changing. My perspective about education has changed as well. But
Yeah.
while we were growing up, it just makes sense that you finish, you go to primary school, you go to secondary school, you go to university. In an ideal situation where going to university helps you, right? In
Yeah.
an ideal situation, it makes sense that you just follow through. But we are living in a society, or the way our society currently is structured is such that majority of people, what they studied in university is not what they are doing for work, right? The
Yeah.
90% of my friends, what they studied in university is not what they did for work. They are doing for work right now. So it's the education and all of that does not really make sense now if we look at it.
Uh-huh.
I
Uh-huh.
mean, better to just go and study what you like or what you are passionate about or something. But in
Yeah.
that sense, I think I conformed in terms of going to school. In
Yeah.
terms of my beliefs about certain things,
Think.
my beliefs about family, about relationships, I think it's kind of traditional, right? So I can say that in that sense, I'm conforming because I'm strongest traditional in terms of family. It's non-negotiable.
When you say
So,
traditional, what do you mean?
and when I say traditional, I mean a two-parent household where everybody stays together. Not
Right.
all of
Okay.
this, not all of this modern, okay, single parenthood, unless
Right.
circumstances makes it happen. I believe that the ideal setting to raise a child is to have a father and a mother and a child in an happy family. That's the ideal situation to raise a child. So in terms of that, I think I conform to what society says in that regard. Um, what
Right.
else?
No, I think that's really good to see. And yeah, I think myself, I've conformed definitely. I've conformed in going to school and stuff like that. But yeah, I think conformity is really more or less like an advantage, like you said, more like a survivor instinct and all. But then I think these days, more than ever before, there's this social pressure online
Yeah,
when you
yeah,
think
yeah.
about social media. And it looks as though if someone would have taken like wherever you said, I think I should just be following trends and all this culture and
Mhm.
everything online. But I think is it doing more harm than good? Like the social media and
I think that I think it is to a large extent. I don't know who said this, but it's a quote I saw somewhere that there have never been a time in history where a single person has been exposed to the collective knowledge of different people. Um,
mm,
Before, the way your contact with other people's thoughts, other people's idea is limited to when you read books, right?
mm,
That's when you get to know what some other people think.
yeah.
When you maybe watch TV, in fact, that was the only way, that was your only contact with a thought that is not your own, right?
Mm,
Maybe if you have, there are societies that they had gatherings where people would sit and discuss ideas. In ancient Greek and all of those places, all of those ancient cultures, they would have things like that where people would sit down and then people would
mm.
give their thoughts about society. That's where people like
And that's mostly
Socrates,
local.
like
So
yeah, and that
I
was
get
local to where you are. It's limited to your location, but it's just a few people. But now we are exposed to the thoughts of so many people. You can
mm.
literally hear the thoughts that people keep in their heads that they don't say before.
On Twitter.
You can you sit down and if you spend the whole day online, you get bombarded by the thoughts of people, by what people think. So we are living in a generation where people are exposed to external thoughts more than ever before. And because of that, it creates a situation where a lot of people don't get to think for themselves, right? Because
Right.
it creates a sort of mental laziness. And that's why in the past we had thinkers societies or those Asian society had people that think that
Mm,
they didn't have so much of fact and all this scientific proof for anything, but they came up with theories based on their observation of the world, right? People like Socrates came up with interpretations about political systems, right? Aristotle, they came up with their original thoughts and ideas. But
mm,
today we are exposed to a lot of regurgitated thoughts. So things that other people have thought about. When something happens, when an issue happens, before you even get to formulate your own thought about it, one or two celebrities have already set their ring lights and already done video about it. And so your mind is already confused because you like this person and you like the way this person talked about it. You like the way this person confidently dissected the issue. Your thoughts about the issue, your thoughts about what is going on is based on what you were exposed to, not your own
mm,
original thoughts. So I think one of the dangers of the kind of society that we live in now is that people get exposed to too much of other people's thoughts and ideas. And
mm.
it filters into how we think, how we behave. And so we see people that are not so original in their
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
People are not so original in their thinking. People are not so original in, and so that's the danger of this whole trend thing and what is trending, what's going on. It's
Mhm.
a lot of times when you look at people behave, you see that it's based on the trend. It's not based on okay, do you really think about this thing on your own, right? Did you come up with this idea, or you're just saying it because somebody else has said it and you think that this person is right, right? That's the danger that me I'm seeing. I can see with the current social media landscape and all of that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think there's really not much to add to that because I feel like it's scary. A lot of people are too lazy to just, think about certain things, process certain things. But maybe it's just because there's a fear that we don't want to also stand out. I think there's that fear. I
Yeah.
don't know why, but
Mhm.
do you
Yeah.
think there's that kind of fear that people just don't want to stand out? They don't want to risk not conforming. They don't want to miss out or something.
Yes.
And
Yeah. It's one of the problems with the social media age and all of that. Um, it's easy to just agree with what somebody else has said. And
mm,
there's this thing that happens a lot of times that something happens, maybe an issue happens, and then you want to give your thoughts about it, and then someone comes and says your thoughts, and then you
mm,
realize that the person is getting dragged, right? So the person is
yeah.
sort of like a sacrificial lamb. You were thinking the same thing,
And then you can, I think
and
that's
then you
happened
keep
to
on
me
like,
so many times that
yeah, and then you see,
it's something I'm thinking about, and then I go to the comment section and I see someone say the same thing, and then
the
I
same,
see
yeah,
other people reply that person, and then I have to give a second thought to what I wanted to say that,
what you're
oh,
saying, because we live in a society where there's a lot of mob action. People
mm,
want to attack someone for saying something. People want to castigate. There is a lot of repercussion for self-expression, especially when it doesn't conform to what people expect. When it doesn't
mm,
conform to the normal, okay, this is the way you should
like
think.
this is where it should
Um,
be, and
People just want to get angry. People just want to. We live in a very volatile environment that any small thing you want to get dragged. So if you're
up and
someone that is afraid of getting dragged,
angry.
if you're afraid of trending, if you're afraid of getting abused, you would not express yourself. And I think that's part of why a lot of people refrain from saying what they think. Unpopular
Yeah.
ideas these days get dragged. Unpopular ideas would always get you always get attacked. But on the flip side, I think that it is necessary that we, as humans, we express ourselves. As much as you want to conform, as much as you want to follow the urge, you should also be able to think for yourself. You
Yeah.
should. It's it's one of those things that is very lacking in our generation. The original
Mhm.
thoughts, the original ideas. If something happens before you even get exposed to other people's thoughts about it, before
Yeah.
you get their opinions sway your thinking
Hmm.
about it, you have to decide for yourself, what side am I taking in this conversation? Because you see there are a lot of rubbish that is being presented with fancy English online.
Right.
There are a
Absolutely.
lot of, and I think when we talked last week, we talked about this as well, that a lot of the people that are loud on social media, they
Mhm.
don't really have so much to contribute to the conversation.
Yeah.
They don't have something useful to say. They are just echoing. They are just saying things that are so off point. If you think about it, they are saying things that are not really helpful. And the people that are supposed to say something prefer to keep quiet because they are afraid of getting dragged.
They're afraid of
And
exactly.
that's how popular opinion forms. That's how societies evolve. When you allow people that have these sub-quality thoughts,
Yeah.
sub-quality ideas, when you allow them to take over the conversation and all the
Mhm.
things they talk about is just things that are so poor quality, you are going
Yeah.
to end up with a society where the quality of thoughts and ideas and conversations will just be poor quality. So we really need
So
to come to a place where we learn to express ourselves regardless of what other people think, what other people have to say about it.
yeah. I think it also reminds me of one study like that that was conducted by a man, Solomon Ash, and basically it brought w- about a group of people into a room, and then there's this one person who is the subject in that case.
Yeah.
And then the subject is with a group of people in a room, and they place like two cards in front of them. On one card, there's a line, and on the other card, there are three lines of different
Okay.
lengths. And so they asked the first person, so they started with easy questions like which of the lines on the right hand side, that is the card with three lines, mostly matches the one on the left. So people said the right thing, and then everybody was like, okay, okay, cool, cool, cool. So the next question was they brought another card on the left that had one line. And so they asked, of the lines on the right hand side, which one of them mostly aligns with the left, with the card on the left? And even though it was so obvious that the line, so they had already told those other guys, they were just actors basically. They had already told them what to say, what answer to say. And so the
Yeah.
researcher would ask one of them that, okay, so on the right hand side, the card with 3 lines, which of the lines mostly matches the length on the left? And then or he would go for the most obviously wrong answer. And then
Yeah.
and then the subject will laugh, like, what's going on here and
Mhm.
all. And then they'll ask the second person will say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And then they saw that at first they would laugh, the subjects would laugh. Then secondly, they would then be like, okay, what's going on here? And then they would start to question themselves. And when it gets to their turn, 75% of them, of the subjects,
We'll say the
actually
wrong
had,
answer.
it was just like, wow. It's really scary what community we can build when
Mhm.
people stop to think for themselves.
Yeah.
When people cannot just decide or think. And I'm not saying we should all just go against the tide, because
Mhm.
going against the
Yeah.
tide would just,
Yeah.
but at the same time, in as much as yes, we have to conform,
Mhm.
we should still kind of like think about it. But it gets me thinking, do we really conform without even realizing it?
Yeah, I think that a lot of conformity for people, it's usually unconscious. Or let's say, I think it's easier to say that, or it's better to put it this way, that it's out of convenience, right?
Hmm.
It's conformity is easy. It's the easiest
True,
thing. It's the
true.
easiest thing. So it doesn't take a lot of effort to follow the trend. It doesn't take so much effort to just do what is, follow what everybody's saying. And like that example you said, that person might know the correct answer, but
Yeah,
it just feels everybody is saying this. Standing out
yeah,
would make things difficult for me, right? So
yeah.
because of that, and that's why it's just a lot of people just find themselves conforming because it's the easiest thing to do. And also because of how people have evolved today, we've grown intellectually lazy. Let me just put it that way. A lot of people now grown intellectually lazy, so much that it's hard to, we are living in a society where information is just you're just seeing you're exposed to
Mm,
1,001 things every day, and
yeah,
so you don't even get that time to even think about your thoughts, about your perspective about anything.
right.
You have split seconds to make that decision, right? So
Yeah.
you're like when something let's say there's a news that breaks now and everybody's talking about it. Let me use a Nigerian situation. Let me use an example now. Last week or last 2 weeks, there was this issue of Two-Face Diddy and his wife, and that was the
Oh,
news. That was all the news. That was everything online. And
yeah.
when you encounter that as someone that uses social media and you get in contact with that scenario, that dilemma, you have to pick side almost immediately. Like
I will
nobody,
side with.
nobody takes the time to research what happens, what happened. Nobody, in fact, a lot of times you don't even have the full information. You don't have the full gist,
Right.
but you
Exactly.
still have
But then
the
we've
society.
already chosen
Society
one.
now still expect you to take a side without having the full information. So without all
Yeah.
of that, people just end up, and that's why people just end up making this convenient decision that, okay, let me just go with what everybody is thinking, or okay, this is what I think is right, without taking the time to weigh all the sides, without considering all of the factors. Okay, why is this like things? Because you said something earlier when we said that nothing is ever black and white.
Yeah.
There is no you cannot just say that, okay, this is right, this is wrong, clean cut in mentions. There are a lot of instances where you have to navigate that situation with wisdom. But
Mm.
when you are making that decision within a very short time, without information, without considering anything, without considering, you just have to just make a decision. And then a lot of times for people that create content, you have to create content based on that. You have to post a thread
Right.
based on that. You have to gist your
Mhm.
friend based on that within a very short time. And bear in mind that that's not the only gist that is online that day. There is another gist too. There is like 4 or 5 gists in a single day that you have to attend to. Right?
Right.
So,
You have to attend to it.
seriously, because it's full-time job for a lot of people. It's full-time job now. You have to just have your mind in one of those in
Pen in
all of these
action.
conversations. Like, so I think that it's takes a lot of work to
Yeah.
stand out, to be different. And that's why if you really want to have your own original thought, if you don't want to conform, then you have to
Yeah.
slow. You have to really, really, really slow down.
How then? What's the balance between like being a, in quotes now, free thinker and still functioning in a society?
In the
Because we've
society.
kind of like, we've evaluated the positives and the negatives and why we make those decisions based on several factors that you've also touched on. So what then? I don't want to be like I'm standing against the tide. And at the same time, I still want to have my own thoughts. How do I balance that?
Yeah.
Is there a balance to it?
Yeah, I think like I said, the first thing is slow down, slow down.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's became my mantra because I used to be somebody that likes arguments. I like getting into I enjoy arguments. I just
I
can't say one
sometimes
thing
do
or
too.
the other about. So once something is happening, I want to put my mouth in this and put my mind. And then at some point, I just realized that guy, calm down, slow down. And that has become my mantra over time. It's one of the things that would help us in this age that you are bombarded with so much information. We need to be able to slow down. We need to be able to evaluate every idea that comes to us, every thought that everybody presents. Because when you're checking your feeds on Instagram, every video you scroll is somebody's thoughts, somebody's idea. Every
Mm,
video,
mm.
it's somebody else somewhere in it that you've never met and you might never
Influencing
meet in
you.
your life, living in a different society, living in a different environment, exposed to things that is different from yours. So all of the things that you are seeing online, whether positive or negative, you cannot allow yourself to be swayed by them. And the key to not allowing that to happen is you have to slow down, stop first. You don't have to be active on every social media platform, right? And
Mm,
if you are active, you don't have to participate in every conversation. You don't have to
mhm.
participate in every conversation. There are some conversations that simply don't need you. There are some conversations that are not productive for you. There are some conversations that you just hear as this and you don't need to form an opinion about it. If
Right.
I see a clip as a personal rule, if I see a clip that is just 30 seconds and maybe they pick a pastor's an excerpt from a pastor's preaching or something from a podcast or something from an interview, and then they pick that, and people start forming, the way everybody does on social media. People start
Yeah.
giving their opinion and giving their thoughts about it. My first thought is: have you listened to the whole podcast? Have you
Right.
heard the pastor's entire
Mhm.
message? Because you are
Established.
just here busting your brains over a 30 minutes
Mhm.
clip out of a 2-hour conversation, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's part of how slowing down helps. So instead of feeding on these tidbits that social media gives you, the one tweet, just how many characters, um, 2 minutes of video on TikTok, 2 minutes of video on Instagram, go to YouTube and watch the whole clip, right? That would even help you to stop consuming those too many content. So if you do that and watch 30-minute clips, you're spending more on that thing than you are on getting too much information into your head. So when you see something, you see, especially when you're on social media, because it's the way we get in contact with all of these different ideas. Take your time to slow down and then think about it. Form your own original thoughts. Form your own original opinions. That would really help. And another thing that I think would be helpful, this is also very difficult, is get knowledge. Get knowledge. And what do I mean by getting knowledge now? You don't make you don't make conclusions based on half truths, incomplete
Mm.
videos. Even with all of those things, there's context to every matter. There's context to
Clickbait.
every situation. there is a
Yeah.
background story. There's a background. There's something that happened. There's an historical context, right? So
Mm.
if they say that something is happening, something is happening today, there's an historical context to it. You don't just jump into, okay, we talk a lot about it. I think one of the conversations that is so rampant online today these days is things about feminism and patriarchy and all of that. And I always say, I think I said in one of the podcasts I was on, that one of the reasons why there's so much fights is because people lack an historical context to this thing.
Yeah.
There's a reason why this thing is this way. There's a reason why
Mm.
society reasons this way. If you say that Nigeria's education, if you look at Nigeria, the Nigerian situation, why Nigeria, there's a reason why Nigeria is like this historically. It's not just because
Yeah.
of what is going on right now. There's a
Mm-hmm.
reason there was in a lot of people don't know 10% of
The
Nigerian history.
try.
We don't know, okay, what happened during the civil war? Why did the civil war happen? What is even the civil war? Who was involved? Ask the average Nigerian on the street. They don't know. Nigeria's independence, how did we become colonized in the first place? How did
Mm.
we get our independence? Who are those that were involved in this? What was involved in this fight? How did it happen? All of those things are historical context to every matter. So if something is going on right now, people talk a lot about okay, scrapping NYSC. What is the reason for NYSC? Right? Those are I'm just giving different examples of
Yeah.
polar situations that people just give opinion
Don't
about.
give
So
opinion.
what is the historical context to this matter? So if you're saying that Nigeria is having a fuel crisis, NNPC is doing this or this and that, what is the historical context? How did we start producing oil? Those are facts that would help you in forming your opinions. Those are knowledge
Mm-hmm.
that would help you in forming your opinions. But if we take this intellectually lazy stance that we don't bother to ask about, don't bother to dig deep or to check or to fact check information to get historical context to know our facts, would come
Yeah.
up with half-baked theories, half-baked ideas that
And
might
then we
or
just
might not be correct. So I think that
Mhm.
would really help when you take all of these things into consideration before you make a decision, before you come up with a stance on anything to really be helpful.
Nice. Thank you very much. I think, yeah, that's really helpful because I've been thinking like, are there things? I know there's a lot of things, but it's just like you said, you start to conform without even knowing these things. And I think it's just what I've been trying to do recently is just to kind of like take a second look at these things. But I think more things that I would do would be to kind of understand the I think I really enjoyed the historical background that you lead for that discussion on the feminism, this or patriarchy, that, and all those kind of things. But yeah, I think historical understanding of backgrounds really do help inform your decision. But
In line with that, in terms of historical,
okay.
I think that a lot of the things that we do today, because we are talking
Mm,
about conformity, a lot of things that we do today are things that were at some point made sense in the context
mm,
of that society that it was in.
mm,
That's the question earlier about education, and I mentioned
yeah,
simply that the kind of at some point in history or in our society, going to school and getting an education, going all the way to university made sense. It was the normal thing to do because once you finish school, you get a job based on what
yeah,
you studied in the university. But we are now living in a society where the majority of people are doing work that they learned through 1 3 month boot camp, through
mhm,
1 year training, through learning from somebody from YouTube, right? That's what a
yeah,
lot of people do. So in this context, in the current context, it makes no
yeah.
sense to go and do 4 years in university studying food science, studying political science, studying courses that library science, courses that are not so relevant. Apologies to those that are studying those courses, but
Ah.
there are a lot, there are a lot of courses that people do today that has no
Uh,
value. So you now finish school and then you now go and do one short course to find
mm,
out that is completely related to what you went to study in school. So if that's the case, it makes sense in today's society to let a child finish secondary school and go and learn those things directly. If it's
mhm, mm,
if it's coding that you want to learn, you don't need to go to school to go and do microbiology and then come and learn coding later,
mm.
right?
I'll leave that table alone. Oh.
And so that's why understanding what
Yeah.
is the historical context, these things that
Mhm.
we are doing now, anything that you have, any decision you are making, it makes sense at some point. It makes sense in some context. It makes sense in some societies. But bringing it here, does it make sense here? Right?
Yeah.
If they're saying that, I want to touch another major table now. People dress a certain way in the past, right? In
Yeah.
some, that's how they used to dress, right? But there's a reason why they were dressing that way. It might not
Mm.
lead into this context, right? So you might need to reevaluate how you see things, and much more than that's the way it has always been done. That's the way it's supposed to be. No, reevaluate it. The reason why they were doing it back then, is this still valid today? If it was meant to protect some certain people at the time, do we still need that today? If it was meant
Yeah.
to prevent certain at the past, do we still need that today? People used to have 15 children because they used to have a big farm that they need hands on. That's why people
Yeah.
used to have plenty children. You cannot come today and have come and have 15 children when you don't need them to do any work. You don't have a farm, you don't have anything you're doing, and you still want to have 15 children. So I
But
think things make sense in some context. But in today's
yeah.
context, based on your own thinking, and that's why you really need to think about anything that you want to do, any decision you want to do, any decision you want to take, think about it and then make your decision based on what makes sense in today's context.
To this contest. I think the fear I used to have, based on what you just said, the fear I used to have is, I think it affected me in some ways personally. That you have to study medicine. This person
Mhm.
studied medicine. That person
Yeah.
studied medicine, and you just have to study medicine. And I fear, in as much as we've tried to break out of that thing
Yeah.
that everybody just wanted medicine, 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 medicine.
Mhm.
I have another fear that we might, in a way, be conforming to another kind. We
Another
might be
thing.
repeating the same mistake.
Yeah.
Basically,
True. True. True.
now
True.
everybody wants Project
Everybody wants to
Mbappe.
learn tech.
Everybody
Everybody
wants
wants to play football.
coding. Everybody wants a cyber security. All this,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you want your children to do that.
Yeah.
Not considering that this thing now, does it still hold water? Is it still
And will it still
relevant?
be valid in the next 10 years? Will it
And
still
will
be
they
like
still
that
be
in the next
valid?
50 years? Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. But may God help us. When we get to that bridge, hopefully we'll be able to cross it without making the mistakes that we've made in the past. But yeah, I think just to kind of wrap it up now, thank you very much. I think there's this thing that I want to continually do, and it's just to ask each guest that comes on the show a question, except you're coming for the second time. But even if you're coming for the second time, we'll still ask you because things might have changed. Is there something you've personally had to change your perspective on recently?
Okay. There's a lot to pick from. So
Uh-uh.
and when I say there's a lot to pick from is because I try to reevaluate my opinion about things a lot to see if they really matter or the things I believe is really matter. Okay, the example I gave recently about education, it's something
Yeah.
that I had to change my mind on recently. And
Mm.
what brought that thought was I was listening to somebody talk and he mentioned something like that about um the I've been bothered about it before, but I didn't really give much thought to it. That why do we have to go all the way? And everybody goes to see, and then you come out and you start doing something else entirely. So it's one of those things that I thought about recently, and I just realized that it's one of those things that I had to reevaluate my opinion about or my perspective about. If the 4 years you are going to go and your 4 year course that you're going to go and do is not something that is relevant in society, it's not something that is
Mm.
useful for you, because trust me, there are a whole lot of courses. There are so many courses that if we think about it, they are even supposed to scrap completely. Yeah, like for real, they're supposed to scrap completely because it has no real world value. Apologies to those that are doing it again, but then if you think about it, those things are not useful. They are not
Mm.
useful.
Mm.
So if you are going to be doing, if you are going to be going to the university, then you have to make sure that what you are going to do is something that has some value, right? That has some real world impact, that has some use in today's society. You can't say that you are going to study library science. Again, it's a very good example that I like to use. Library science, local government studies, right? Um, a lot of them, a lot of courses like that we cannot, like you hear some courses that be like, so this one exists. Science laboratory tech. Those are courses that were useful at some point. You
Yeah.
do science
Yeah.
laboratory tech, you cannot work in a hospital. So what's the point? They are not, they will hire people that did medical lab science, not science lab tech,
True.
right?
True.
So what science lab do you want to go and work when you do the science lab tech? And you do that course for 4 years. And then you now finish, you now say there's no work. It's because there's work. There's in actual sense no work. There's this common that if they tell you in your class, in your course that you can work anywhere, it means that you cannot work anywhere. That's the implication. That's the implication. Once they are telling you that this course that you are studying, you can use it to work anywhere. Forget it. That you'll be able to work. So
Anywhere is nowhere.
it's one thing that I really thought about recently, and I just realized that if my kid does not want to, if what my kid wants to study is a course that does not require him or her to go to university, I would encourage him or her not to. Right?
Really?
Yes. If it's a big thought, but it's something that
Yeah.
we need to evaluate. If you're not going to study a course that that what you go and learn in the university is something that can be used outside, right? There are a lot of them. If we sit down, if the episode was about them, I probably would have come up with a list of things that courses that, because I actually sit down and think about all of those courses that this course, do we really need it, right? And you have thousands of people. My course, I did geology, and out of my entire sets, I think about, let's say on average now, about 40 people finished, and only 2 people, so only 3 stayed with geology. And out of those 3,
Wow.
2 of them, about all of them are still doing masters. It's not like they got a job in geology. They are still doing their masters. So
So they might still eventually change.
exactly. But for now, the people that are doing, so imagine in a course of 50 people do a course and only 5 of them. So that's that's just 10% of
10%.
the entire
Sorry.
class. And that is just for one school. Imagine the entire country and number of people that are doing those courses. So there are a lot of relevant courses. So I think for me, that's one thing that I really had to change my perspective about, that if I have a child and who doesn't want to go to university, or who is doing, if your child is interested in music and can learn, there are other avenues to learn, music schools and all of that, can as well do
Yeah.
that. If your child is interested in arts and there are arts academics, you can as well do that. If your child is
Right.
interested in baking, in all of these things that you can learn in informal sectors, if there is a way to formalize those things, I would actively be a part of it. I'm still hoping that maybe one day we'll be able to do that. All these non-school, all these informal tech skills or informal skills generally, not tech now, mechanic and all of those things, they can be formalized and let people learn it and give
True
up
though.
way after. But they should go and learn
Yeah.
it in the formal sector, right?
Yeah.
You know that they've gone because it's not like when you get to university that they teach you how to. You've learned it in secondary school. It's not the
Yeah.
university English that you're learning. So all of those things. So basically, I think that's one major thing that I've changed my perspective about in recent time. That is like the biggest thing I can think of right now. And hopefully Nigeria
Even
gets better. Things change.
yeah. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for listening. And to every of our listeners out there, see you again soon. And let me know what you guys think on this episode. Your comments and feedback are highly appreciated. See you again soon. Bye. Bye for now.